class. Welcome to Section 7, your last learning section, Magento Developer Training. Adminhtml. So we've learned a lot about this global environment with modules, and then some of the front-end changes that we can make with observers and with our design. But now we have to delve into Adminhtml. So everything that you know about design in the front end also exists in Adminhtml. But there's also there's a lot of convention. Has anyone here tried to build Adminhtml? How enjoyable was that experience? No. It's sort of like, well, I made this, I follow the example of some other module, and then all of a sudden the system just starts spitting errors out about, oh, this class doesn't exist. And you're like, I didn't try and build that class. But so, again, the same design package classes are involved in rendering for the back end, but there's also this extra bit that you can do, and that's actually what Magento does automatically. So if you want your module to have a similar, have the module forms to have similar look and feel as the core, you can actually use this, and you'll see it's a lot of typing, but it's actually, in a way, it can save a lot of time. And we will show you exactly why you would take the module, the module backend that you build here, and use that as a prototype if you ever have to do it again. So, all right, our structure is just looking at the general conceits behind the admin area, then go into the ACL permissions. So we have to start with setting you up with some access control. Very easy. It's a very simple implementation in Magento and configured via XML. Then system configuration. So this is the system menu item configuration menu option. That whole panel is built via XML. And then we have the big lesson, which is forms and grid widgets. So this will actually be, we'll look at taking, using our module that we've been working on and building an administration piece in the back end for it. And then we'll touch briefly at the end on extension installation, and I will probably field some questions from you guys about anything that you can think about. So, Adminhtml. Everyone by now I know has seen the Adminhtml panel, and the first thing that we have to revisit is the Adminhtml module. So you'll recall in our modules and in other modules in the core, we have this nice, pretty presentation of namespace, module name, and then blocks, controllers, helpers, models, and then our files underneath that. So the problem is, back in the day, as we discussed when we were talking about URL rewrites, was the only way Magento could get all of the different modules' content under that admin route was to create this Adminhtml module and aggregate every single module thereunder. So you open up the blocks folder in Adminhtml, and it's like you're looking at the Mage namespace again, because you'll see CMS, catalog, sales, everything. So again, fortunately, we don't have to do that now that we can rewrite things prettily. So moving on from there, Adminhtml, similar to the front end, there is an admin router. So whereas before we were specifying config and then front end routers and then using a standard router, for the admin it would be admin routers, Adminhtml, use admin. Again, the nice thing is our Adminhtml module, we don't have to worry about this configuration. We simply just add a modules node under args here. All right, so the admin store, that's the global store. That's the store with ID 0. Let's see. That's actually set via an observer in the Adminhtml before we dispatch the controller. Oh, I'm sorry, before we dispatch our action. Okay, let's see. Adminhtml, regular. So, again, as I was saying, the Adminhtml module aggregates all the other modules under it. For the admin menu, this is the menu across the top, and of course there's no overview and there's no Adminhtml action menu items. So the menu items are dashboard. That's the dashboard panel. Incidentally, with the dashboard, there is that chart is built via Google API, so there is some overhead there. So if you can feel free to disable that. You actually have the option to use it or not in when you install Magento for the very first time. The different areas, obviously, these are the different modules organized under these different menus. So sales will give you, of course, access to your orders and credit memos, etc., as well as taxes, which are under here, not under catalog. Catalog, obviously, categories, products, attributes. Mobile is a subscription service that you can subscribe to and actually get your website turned into an iPhone, iPad, or Android platform application. Just talk to your Magento salesperson. Customer area obviously is going to have customer-related management. Promotions, these are coupons, cart rules, etc. Newsletters. CMS would be where you set up your CMS pages, where you go to administer the home page, and also static blocks. Reports actually serves to just collect reports for catalog module and sales module, and then system gives us all sorts of utility functions. All right, yes, and the most significant, of course, is system config. Adminhtml action. So Adminhtml, that class has this isAllowed method, and we'll see how this is used in a moment. But basically, if you have a controller that is in the admin, in order to do any kind of ACL test, you have to implement this isAllowed function. Otherwise, regardless of ACL, people will have access to your module. And we'll look at that, what that means in a second. This is the basic structure. Because this is what we get to do now, and this is so vastly preferable to how things used to work. I will say you should remember this exactly, because if you need to get your module controller under that admin space, you would use exactly this: admin routers, admin.html, args, modules, and then simply add your node in here with the appropriate instructions. And in fact, you can look in Mage Widget, and I think in Mage Index, those two modules for an example. And I can't stress that enough. Best way to learn the right way to do something in Magento is to look at how it is done in how Magento does it themselves. And with the caveat that the older modules didn't always adhere to the best practices. So newer modules like Mage Index and Mage Widget have plenty of good examples of best practices. So you can often find a great answer in the code in there. We'll look at what this does practically. I mean, the goal, of course, is that your module should have its files, all of its files, contained in one place. So the older Magento core, though, each module had to have its administrative side stored under Mage Admin.html. It's a real pity. So basically, this means that we don't have to do that anymore. It makes for a much cleaner, much more logically structured module. And so, in the convention would be in your module. So in training animal, for example, you would have training animal, little C controllers, Admin.html folder. So if Magento, then the system, if it's on a route and it can't, in this case, it would look in our directory for matching controller first before looking, in our controller, I'm sorry, before looking in Adminhtml. Because again, that's all we're doing here is we're just adding our module's path ahead of, in this case, ahead of the core path. So, caching settings. I've talked about this a little bit. So, obviously, when you are developing, you'll want to, you may want to save yourself a few keystrokes or mouse clicks and leave different cache areas disabled. But at some point, responsible development means that you have to enable that caching again. You just have to make sure that there's nothing bizarre that happens. And that's true even with theming. Imagine putting a Twitter feed into that footer block, which is cached. And then you find out from your client, usually a couple days later, like, dude, I just told the world about my widgets on Twitter, and my website doesn't reflect that because that footer block is cached. So if you enable caching again in your development environment, you would probably catch those errors. So, and also another consideration though of disabling the cache is obviously it'll slow down your development environment a little bit. By default, these cache files are stored in var cache. This is configurable though, so what you would really want to do is, especially in the case of alternate cache backends, you would want to invalidate your cache through the cache control panel under System. Let's see. All right, so declare a page in the admin and create an observer on the page. Okay. This one we'll have to type ourselves. Yeah, no, this is the solution to this exercise is a couple pages back. And that was the example I showed you from the Mage widget module. Or at least for that first part. And then we've also seen how to do layouts in the front end, and it's analogous in the back end. We just have to put it under a different area. So let's do part one. And I believe that page, so in training animal, page 454. Put that in training animal. Only you would obviously want to refer to training animal Adminhtml. The choice that you make is written to that Etsy local file where our database settings, encryption key, etc. are. So, that front name here, right? Now, one thing to point out is you should always change this. If some vulnerability is ever discovered, now this has largely been solved with the addition of the secret key. That's that hash that appears in the back end. It's off, I think, by default in your virtual machine, but if someone finds some vulnerability and you can just, all you have to do is simply discover a Magento site's the path to the admin and post some data to a controller, you're at least somewhat, you're a little bit more protected if you've changed this value. So, I mean, imagine someone finds a vulnerability, and then it's pretty easy. It can be pretty easy to sniff out Magento sites and assume that the path to the admin is just admin. So that's just the first line of defense. But I would consider that to be a best practice. So the folder where we're going to be putting this stuff. So let's see. Let me peg my file system open here. So training animals. So let me see. In here, I need to specify. I've got all sorts of configuration here, don't I? Oh, that's not me. Let's see. Do I have my routes set up? Yeah. So.
Oh, no widget, huh?
So. Yeah, I wouldn't want to use widget. Widget probably uses widget. Again, what we have here is something that's unique. So chances are, actually, if we use widget,
Training.
yeah, if we use widget here, let me see, training, probably, actually, I think the widget would win. No, mage, no, we would win. But basically, we would break widget if we had widget here. Because what we need is a unique node under modules. Because other modules are also adding to this. Widget is one of them. All right, so that's good. So now I need to make, let me see. So I'm saying, all right, admin. So I probably need some kind of controller file. So here we'll say, all right. So here we'll say, I'll need my little c controllers and an Adminhtml folder. And then in here, and that's based on what I have here. And again, Adminhtml is just convention, but it makes sense. And then in here, I just need controller file. So I could have an index controller. And in here, specify class name. So class training animal Adminhtml index controller What's that?
To extend a different class, or?
Yes, we'll extend from a different class. Class name. Oh, yeah, that's why I couldn't think of it. Sorry, not made core. There we go.
Wait a minute, if you make an index controller that will not override the admin index controller?
Oh, that's actually a good point. I think actually, but is there an index controller?
Gotta be when you go to admin or something.
Yeah, but you're always pegged to a default route. Like the dashboard is not index; it's dashboard.
So index
Dashboard.
doesn't forward
I don't know if there is one, but let's be safe. Let's say animal controller. And now we can be pretty sure we're safe. Let's see. And if, let's see what Adminhtml controllers. There is an index controller.
So you would have overridden that also, right?
Well, no, it would have just looked for mine first.
Made and there's no control. Oh, you would not have overridden it.
Yes,
Yours
exactly.
would never have fired because yours is after.
Yeah. Well, unless the route that was being visited wasn't found here, and then it would. That's
Which
what
was
after
the nice
does.
thing we discussed. The action wasn't.
Exactly. So if the action weren't found,
I mean, I would imagine it's nice to keep your own, controller name different.
yeah.
I see that. That's the keeps coming down that great feature there.
Could I see the animal controller again?
Yeah, so I'll of course need to change this name to animal controller. But again, because I'd specified after in my in the modules node, it'd still be okay. I wouldn't be breaking any core functionality. I'd basically be tacking on my actions.
Do you need to change the file name?
Exactly. Yes, I do. Again, that file name and that class name are tied. So under Adminhtml, I now have an animal controller. And in here, I can do whatever I want. So. So then what we need is some layout instructions. And just as we had with, oops, that doesn't go there. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you guys didn't correct me. That doesn't go in global. That goes under config. As is the case with Adminhtml. So for this design area, I'm going to have, let's see, layouts, layout, updates, and then a node for me, and then in here I have to specify a file. So we have, the way to think about this again is admin is just another config area, just like global, as well as Adminhtml. So we'll have, we have to tuck our layout instructions into the Adminhtml node. And then we also have to establish our routers along that admin path. So the connection here, of course, training, animal, controllers, Adminhtml. So you just always have to know controllers goes after the second layer here. And we're just simply, in our case, we're actually adding our directory to the list of directories where Magento will look for controllers. And because this is linked to the file system, our controller class will be linked to the file system, and that affects, of course, what we have to name it. Okay? So that's good. So that's the exercise. Now, declaring our own theme. Well, problem. And the problem is, actually, find feed. So find feed you get with Magento, with your Magento install. And if we look in design, under Adminhtml, they're already using another theme.
Okay, fine.
I don't know why. The only thing I can think of is that because it's a, it's a different company, licensing maybe. I don't know why it's why it's not put in the core, since it comes from Magento Incorporated.
What's wrong now? Oh, so you're saying the admin now is.
So now, if we wanted to specify our own theme, we would break find feed.
Oh, because you have the one level of fallback.
Right, because if we look here, well, let's see. Stores, admin, design, theme, default. It's fine. Sorry. I've specified training animal. So that's what we do here. Adminhtml layout updates. All we're simply doing is telling the layout class that we have. Our module has updates
Wait a minute.
for the Adminhtml area.
You add the training folder under the design, right?
Yep. Design, Adminhtml, default, and no, here I'm adding it under layout because this is a layout file.
Design, default layout. Okay, you add the training, right?
Yeah, and we can see where for the enterprise edition, those layout files are also added the correct way in a folder. So under training, I have animal XML, basically whatever I specified here. And we're actually going to be creating, we'll be using this controller to build the administrative views for our module. So we'll do the template later. Okay. That's that. Let's see what happens if we go to that page. Oh, actually, I can't. I've got my secret key turned on here. Let me turn this off. By the way, for your production environments, absolutely always use secret key.
What are you checking on?
I'm disabling it now so I can test my route. Otherwise, I won't have a hash, and I'll get kicked back to the dashboard. So now I just want to check that my route's going to work. So I added my route onto that admin front name here.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have an animal action and an index controller, so I should be able to go to animal. Okay, good. So I did 404. Create an observer on page pre-dispatch that logs every visited page to file and works only in admin. So again, that we have to start in the configuration, right?
Right.
And I think I already have that set up here. And of course, we want this to work in the admin. Okay, so if everyone has copied and pasted efficiently, then what we need to do is set up this observer. Pre-dispatch logs every visited page to file and works only ended. Okay, so let's see what that would look like. All right, and I will paste this now to the file. And let's see, this will be training animal model observer, right? Because of what I have here, training observer, mage get model, training observer, so training animal model observer, all right? And this is the function that I will pass in.
So you create a,
So I just pasted that there, and I'll, of course, I'll have to make it here as well.
Do you always just have one observer class?
Yeah, that's the convention, is to have, I mean, you're not limited. I mean, whatever you pass in here, so I mean, I could have any number of observer classes, but generally you'll have just the one class as an observer, and it'll be named observer just as a convention. Again, I mean, anything you can do, you always just have the test for me about different things is am I going to understand this in 6 months?
Yeah.
So what are we doing here? Well, okay, remember those session models from yesterday? We're getting the admin session model using singleton, getting the current user. So basically we're doing a test here because we have to make sure that this is actually returning returning something, in this case an object. In fact, a more well-defined logical test here would be, if object. Is object? What is it? OEB? OBJ or object?
formal element subject.
Okay. Yeah, that. And then call and get username. Or not logged in. So, and then what are we doing here? Well, we're logging. So we're saying, okay, so we're getting the username, and we're going to get the path info. So we're going to get the request, the route that they're on, setting a debug level of just info, and writing to the admin log. And we're forcing this to always happen. So now, if you go and click around your admin anywhere, I mean, we're doing this under our own module, but this event is going to be fired anytime in this case, because we're in the admin HTML events area. Anytime our this controller action pre-dispatch method is fired, we're going to write something to log. So that's going to be every single page visit in the admin. It's not a bad little tool. And again, I guess yet another thing we're demonstrating is just how awesome observers are. Now, if I go and look in let me pop this open. So now if I go to my admin panel and I go to manage products, hey, there's an admin log. And look what it says. All right. Admin, that's my name. Visited admin catalog product. So